wise words. She was quite old but still desirable. This is a True or False episode. Find a pen. Badunk. Such an idiot. I was looking for a pen and then I find out there's a pen inside the bloody notebook already. Okay. Yes. It's that time again. Time to test Simon's detective skills against my fictional writing skills. If you haven't guessed it already, it's time to play True or False. You already told me this, Dave. Once here, new viewers, if you're new, welcome. The show format is Dave has written me a script I've never read it before. We're going to play a game today. You want to play with us? Join in. Hey! Just like last time, I will present Simon with a list of stories. In this instance, all involving various drunken escapades. And it will be up to him to decipher the cool, crisp truth from the murky alcohol-free fiction. As I'm sure Simon did not pay attention to the note at the top of the script. Not only did I not only read your note, Dave, I read it aloud as if it was a part of the script and turned it into like a little thing where I had to go get a pen and then ended up with 2 pens. Yes, Dave, let's go. Just before we continue with today's episode, a quick word from our fantastic sponsor, and that is Surfshark. Do you ever feel like your internet privacy is slipping through your fingers like sand? Well, you should, because it is. But the good news is Surfshark, today's sponsor, is here to save the day. Surfshark is not just any VPN. It is a digital guardian angel. Look, whether you are in a coffee shop and you're like, oh, Starbucks free Wi-Fi, that doesn't sound safe at all. It could be, someone called Peter upstairs who's trying to hack into your shit. Well, with Surfshark, no worries there because it encrypts all of your data. So if you're browsing your bank or whatever, encrypts it so that no one in the middle can be like, oh, hello, banking details. Hello there. Let's go shopping. No. Also, let's say you're abroad and you miss your Netflix from back home because different countries have different Netflix libraries. Well, just fire it up and be like, now I'm back home. Or maybe you've never been to Canada and you're like, oh, but Canada has this show on Netflix that I want to see. Well, boom, you can go to Canada digitally with Surfshark. Use the promo code BLAZE for an extra 3 months for free. Just head to surfshark.deals/blaze to secure your slice of online privacy today. And now back to today's video. Leo Laporte gets absolutely faced at CES. I don't know who Leo Laporte is, but CES is the consumer electronics show where you get to see all the new gadgets and... If you're old like me and enjoy tech podcasts like me, then you may very well be familiar with the rather excellent work of Leo Laporte. Just in case you're not old and still enjoying outside rather than listening to a group of elderly experts chatting about various things in the tech industry, Leo Laporte is a legend. He's one of those people who seems to have been around forever and now 67. He started doing his career doing various phone-in radio shows during which he would answer questions given to him by the technologically ill-informed. Nowadays, he runs Twit, or This Week in Tech, an empire consisting of many different shows presented by various experts. God, it's interesting how it's like, I'm sure this is like some big empire of podcasts. I've never heard of it. It's like weird how you can like, the internet's so big that there could be something big out there and you're just like, never heard of it. Weird, isn't it? One of the many awesome things about Leo, and yes, I do have a bit of a man crush, so there's no need to point that out in the comments, is his ability to make anyone who appears on his show feel at home almost immediately. During one particular broadcast, he was being interviewed by a young journalist who had never done any live work before and was getting, to say the very least, a little bit starstruck and tongue-tied. In order to break the ice, Leo told the following story. While attending CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, in around 1978, Leo got exceptionally drunk.
I said I'd get sloshed off of one beer, crazy man.
You like vodka? Let's have a vodka.
Yeah, let's do vodka.
So drunk, in fact, that he had to be returned to his hotel room by several of his journalistic companions. At around 3 a.m., whilst in that horrific state that is part drunkenness and part hangover, he woke up naked, disorientated, and desperate for a pee. Not bothering to turn on the light, he got out of bed, stumbled to the nearest door, and walked through it. It was only when the door closed behind him, with what he described as a sobering click of finality, that he realized he had selected the wrong door and was now standing naked outside his hotel room with no possible way to get back in. Oh my god, what do you do in a situation like that? I'll be like, find a curtain, take the curtain down. It's like, that's now my dress. Gonna go get someone at reception. After standing around for a while in the optimistic hope that a member of staff might just happen by his room at 3 o'clock in the morning, he was left with no choice but to make the long, arduous journey down to reception. I'd also look for a phone, because some phones, like, they have just the general phone, in the hallway for people to, so you can call down for, like, some hotels have that. But it gets even better. When he arrived at the elevator, he discovered it was out of order, so he had no choice but to walk down 15 flights of stairs, encountering several bemused guests along the way. Yeah, I would be like, I'll take the stairs, like the fire exit stairs, just so I didn't have to take the lift. But if the lift isn't working, they're all going to be on the fire exit stairs as well. But it gets even better. When he finally arrived at reception, he discovered that he could not get into that part of the building without his key, which was, of course, handily stored in his trousers back in his room.
What?
Wait, that's a terrible design, hotels. Like, one's to all the people who do accidentally lock themselves out like this dude. Even if they're not naked, that's a hassle. After a moment's contemplation, he realized that if he were to go through the nearby fire door and run along the side of the building for about 15 yards, he'll be able to enter reception through the main door. Oh, it gets better, doesn't it? Because he sets the fire alarm off and everyone sees him. As soon as he opened the fire door, the building's alarm system was triggered and sleepy, angry people began to evacuate. And so it was that Leo Laporte, future legendary radio host and podcast host, sprinted naked into the packed lobby of a fancy Las Vegas hotel, demanding a towel. Looking back on the story now, I imagine that he is fairly grateful it happened during the late 70s and not today. Had it been today, pictures of his penis would have been circulated throughout social media by the time he made it back to his room.
That's a penis.
This is true. Number one. True. Either this is the best piece of fiction ever, or it's true. I think it's true. What do you think, dear audience? It's true. Reese Witherspoon got arrested because her husband was drink driving. Unfortunately, when I first found out about this, I made the same mistake I always do and confused Reese Witherspoon with Gwyneth Paltrow. No, they're very different people. I don't know why I always do this. Maybe it's because they look exactly the same to me. Although I will now not have the opportunity to make a plethora of fishy candle vagina jokes, the story is still a good one, so let us continue. In 2013, Jim Toth, the husband of Witherspoon, was driving with his wife in a top-of-the-line luxury car. Actually, it was a Ford Focus. What? What was... Oh, now I'm confusing them. Reese Witherspoon, husband, drives a Ford Focus? Really? I mean, Ford Focus is a fine car, but Reese Witherspoon's like a billionaire. And don't be like Simon, billionaire actors aren't billionaires. And it's like, no. Reese Witherspoon is an incredible businesswoman. And maybe if she's not worth $1 billion, she's worth a load. When one of the fine gentlemen of the law decided that he would quite like to have a chat with them. Apparently, Toth had been driving slightly erratically, and the officer was interested in discovering whether or not he'd consumed any alcohol. Unfortunately for Toth, this was indeed the case, and despite not being black, he was arrested on the suspicion of driving while intoxicated.
Hold your fire! This man isn't black! What?
Now, put yourself in his wife's shoes for a moment. Your husband has just been arrested after failing a breathalyzer test at the side of the road. I don't know if it's the same in America, but in the United Kingdom, if you fail a roadside breathalyzer test, you must go immediately to the police station and provide another breath sample on a much more accurate machine. There is, in short, no way you are going straight home. At this point in time, Witherspoon was still perfectly free to take control of the family vehicle and go about her day, collecting her husband from the police station later if she wished to do so. Bearing in mind you yourself have been drinking, would you A, keep your mouth shut and go about your day, or B, kick off at the police officer? I'd go for A, but I get the feeling it's going to be B. This camera just stopped, so I'm just going to start it again.
It's about damn time.
Although the former is obviously the better decision, you can guess by now Witherspoon chose the latter. Excuse me, Coca-Cola. That's right, in that particular way that any of us who even occasionally write about celebrities love, she lost her with the arresting officer and demanded to know whether or not he knew exactly who she was. Oh no, don't say that! Do you know who I am? Don't say that, it's mega cringe. Whether or not he did, in fact, know who she was is unclear. It certainly did not stop him from arresting her for disorderly conduct. To be fair, she appears to have completely owned the mistake later, making a fairly convincing public apology. I think it's true, because it's kind of boring. And I think it's true. And it's specific. It's specific. Lucas Fitzroy Pontis has a drinking contest with a bear. Alaska is a peculiar place, and apparently the people who live there are even more peculiar. This can perhaps be no more aptly demonstrated than by telling the story of Lucas Fitzroy Pontis. Lucas Fitzroy Pontis sounds like a made-up name. Lucas Fitzroy Pontis sounds like the sort of thing that Dave in the answers will be like, yeah, Lucas Fitzroy Pontis is actually an acronym for Simon's a dick. And I'll be like, oh, yeah, should have seen that one coming. So let's see about that, shall we, Dave? I'm already thinking it's false. According to an article in the Alaskan Chronicle, Pontis was a bit of a legend. A former friend of his described him to a reporter thusly: everyone's got that one friend who is up for anything, a practical joker who is just as happy to be the recipient of a practical joke purely for the fun of it. For us, that friend was Lucas. The article, incidentally written after his death, goes on to say, one example of Lucas's near suicidal levels of impulsiveness occurred when he and some friends were driving around their hometown of Talkeetna. As the story goes, they were just driving around with no particular destination in mind when they were forced to stop due to the fact that there was a bear in the middle of the road. Before anybody could stop him, Lucas had leaped from the car and proceeded to charge the animal while shouting and screaming. Apparently, this guy's insane. Apparently, the bear wanted no part of this crazy madman and immediately fled the scene, leaving Lucas unharmed and with an incredible story to tell. Apart from being crazy, Lucas was, according to his friends, an exceptionally skilled crafter of both homebrew beer and moonshine. Unfortunately for him, it was these skills that would eventually lead to his death. During some sort of outdoor gathering, Lucas and his friends noticed that not far away from them, there was a large brown bear looking in their direction and sniffing the air. Yeah. False. I'm already locking it in. Lucas decided it was the same bear from the road, and because it was the same bear, he had nothing to fear. Strangely, instead of chasing it away again, he decided that this time he would offer it a drink. In spite of the protestations of his friends, he poured a large quantity of moonshine into a bucket and walked about halfway to the bear, left it on the ground and retreated. Imagine everybody's surprise when the bear approached the bucket and after a short pause consumed its contents. From that point on, in the mind of Lucas at least, he and the wild animal were now friends.
Did we just become best friends? Yup!
So, what do you do with your friends? Well, you drink with them, of course. After retrieving and refilling the bucket, he grabbed a bottle of moonshine for himself, and this time walked almost all the way over to the bear before setting the bucket down once more. As he waited, calling back to his friends that this was something they should definitely take a Polaroid of, the bear once again approached, stood for a moment, and then attacked Lucas so savagely that he died less than 5 minutes later. Don't with bears. Life lesson. I'm not sure how much difference it makes to the overall story, but one of his friends would later tell reporters that it definitely was not the same bear. Interestingly, a friend of mine who is also a writer but does not work for Simon yet, and originally brought the story to my attention some months ago, had this to say on the assertion of the aforementioned friends. It could easily have been the same bear on both occasions. The difference between two encounters was that the bear was most likely drunk when this guy approached him for a second time, intent on a convivial boozing session. However, you know how some folk can be once they've got a drink or two inside them and in turn nasty for no reason other than they're intoxicated. Who's to say that the same isn't true of bears? False, Dave! I think it's false! Young lad accidentally hooks up with his girlfriend's mother. Anybody who has ever been involved in any sort of long-term relationship will almost certainly have had some sort of awkward moment involving their potential in-laws. Nothing immediately comes to mind. And I do find myself like a pretty cringe person at times. So there's definitely things, but I just can't remember anything specific. Otherwise, I'd definitely share them with you unless they were too cringe, in which case I'd be like, never mention it. Never mention it. But I genuinely can't think of anything super cringe. Or even just regular cringe. Usually, this kind of awkwardness comes from an inappropriate joke, you're being unemployed, or your new father-in-law coming to the sudden realization that you are, in fact, having sex with his daughter. I guess, I don't know. One thing, like when I first started doing the whole YouTube thing, it's like, people are like, career, huh? This is what you're doing now, huh? But now I'm like rich and successful. It's like, it's better. It's definitely, now I'm like, yeah, look who was right.
I'm rich, bitch!
As uncomfortable as all of these situations may be, nothing comes close to the tension that must have surrounded the Sunday lunch table when an 18-year-old lad was supposed to be meeting his girlfriend's mother for the first time. This story, which the lad in question told on the thankfully shortly lived Lily Allen show, went something like this. Although he was scheduled to appear at his girlfriend's parents' house for lunch the next day, and had therefore been told that under absolutely no circumstances should he go out that night and get hammered, he did. The evening started out innocently enough. A friend called him and invited him to go for a beer. Unfortunately, one beer in the pub with your mates isn't a real thing. One beer led to too many beers. I went to a pub yesterday. Yesterday, for lunch, actually, and with my family. But there was a chart on the table that said cost of things or cost to tell your wife. Something like that. And it was like, 50 crowns. We'll tell her you're not here. 100 crowns. We'll tell her you had one beer and left. And then it just went up from there. It was amusing, but less good when I tell it again. It's like, definitely you had to be there sort of thing. So I don't really know why I'm retelling this story. Let's just carry on, shall we?
It's the coolest story I've ever heard in my entire life.
Can I hear it again?
One beer led to too many beers, then many shots, and then a suggestion that it would be a good idea to go clubbing. While on the whole, it is never a good idea to go clubbing, agreed. On this particular evening, it was an even worse idea than usual. As the subject of our story sank deeper and deeper into a bottle of tequila, he noticed a rather striking middle-aged lady on the dance floor. In his words, she was quite old but still desirable. Quite forgetting the promise he made to his girlfriend about not getting drunk and perhaps forgetting that he had a girlfriend at all, he approached the lady in question, and a short while later they were enjoying each other's company on the dance floor. He went on to tell Lily Allen that a slightly longer while later they were in the toilets together, and she was performing the same act on him that Monica Lewinsky famously performed on Bill Clinton.
It's kind of like naked skydiving into a mountain of warm whipped cream. Yes, that good!
Allegedly. Allegedly? Do you need allegedly there? I don't know. The next day, hungover, ashamed, and with his girlfriend barely speaking to him, he walked into her parents' dining room and realised that her mother looked familiar. That's right, not only had he cheated on his girlfriend, but he had cheated on his girlfriend with her mother.
Get on your knees!
I'm not your mother last night!
Bro. As I said, the story from the bizarre confession section of the Lily Allen show, which was broadcast on BBC Three. As I write this, I'm aware that this information will be absolutely no help whatsoever to Simon. I'll be prepared to bet, a not inconsiderable amount of money, that he has never heard of this show and probably never heard of Lily Allen. I feel like I know Lily Allen. She sings music. I couldn't name a single song, but I know that's what she does. I've never heard of the Lily Allen show. I didn't even know BBC Three was a thing. Still, I both invite him to decide whether or not it is true and to guess the bizarre... Oh wait, I know BBC Three is a thing because I know BBC 4 is a thing. So logically, BBC 3 would be a thing. But I don't know what sort of stuff it broadcasts, and I guess I'm better off because the Lily Allen show's I'm probably not in their demographic. And by not in their demographic, I mean I have like 2 brain cells to rub together. Should he accurately guess this bizarre twist, I will quite happily forfeit any of the points I've accrued so far. I definitely didn't guess the twist, but I think this one is true. And holy shit. President gets so drunk that he goes out for pizza in his underwear. America is no stranger when it comes to drunken politicians. George Washington loved alcohol so much that during the Revolutionary War, he made sure that his soldiers received at least 1 cup of rum every day. John Adams reportedly drank 1 pint of hard cider for breakfast every day, and even President Obama admitted to drinking heavily in his youth. I mean, like, is that unusual? Didn't President Obama say that he, did coke once? Or was that weed? Either way, good for him. I was interested to learn that former President Donald Trump does not drink at all, although, given that he lost his brother to alcoholism, I guess it's not that surprising. As sad as that is to imagine, I imagine for those whose job it is to follow Trump around, apologising for, rewording, or outright denying things that he said, the fact that he does not drink at all is probably quite annoying. Imagine how much easier their lives would be if they could blame his latest lie, incitement to riot or act of casual racism, on the fact that he was steaming drunk. Anyway, I digress. This entry isn't about Donald Trump at all. In fact, it's not even about an American politician, rather a Russian president who happened to be visiting an American president in 1994. At the time, information about Boris Yeltsin's alleged alcoholism was not particularly widely publicized. It has only really been comparatively recently that people have begun to write about it. One of the most famous people who chose to write about it was Taylor Branch, who in his 2009 book, The Clinton Tapes, told the following story. After a hard day, I think this is True, this feels so true. After a hard day of doing whatever it is Russian and American presidents do when they get together, Yeltsin returned to the Blair House Hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue in order to rest up for the next day's exciting activities. Don't they stay do visiting presidents stay? I guess they do stay at a hotel. For some reason in my mind they'd stay at the White House, but they wouldn't, would they? Because there's just like the president's house and it's a work thing. I don't know why I assume they just stay at his house. At least that is what the Clintons thought he was doing. In reality, Yeltsin appears to have been carrying out an extensive research into whether or not vodka is the same in the United States as it is in Russia. Whether or not he found American vodka to be to his taste, he certainly seems to have consumed a lot of it that evening. So much so, in fact, that evening, according to Branch, quote, Secret Service agents discovered Yeltsin alone on Pennsylvania Avenue, dead drunk, clad in his underwear, yelling for a taxi. Obviously, believing that her front-page photograph of a drunken, scantily-clad Russian president might not exactly do wonders for diplomatic relations, the Secret Service detail tried to convince Yeltsin that it might be a good idea if he returned inside. Unfortunately, he wasn't having any of that. He wanted a pizza, and he was going to find a taxi that would assist him with his quest.
I'm going on an adventure!
Although Clinton would later confirm in an interview that he did in fact get his pizza, it is believed that somebody else was dispatched upon this most noble of all quests. Just in case this isn't quite unbelievable enough, a similar situation occurred the very next night. True, this is too absurd to be false. There's a lot of trues. This time, Yeltsin evaded security and tried to escape the hotel via the underground parking garage. This time, it was very nearly much more serious. Due to the fact that he was once again clad in only his underwear, a member of the building's security team mistook him for a drunken intruder, and the situation required quite a lot of sorting out. I imagine that had the Russian president been shot by a rental cop, it would have made the current political situation between Russia and America look quite stable and peaceful in comparison. Yes, it definitely would. Old lady dies after failure to understand sarcasm. Having visited America on several occasions, I'm always slightly bewildered to discover that subtle sarcasm often goes largely unnoticed. I mean, direct in-your-face sarcasm, such as that portrayed by Friends character Chandler Bing, is often considered the very pinnacle of comedy excellence, but in Britain, we tend to use a much more subtle, nuanced version of sarcasm which does not translate well across the pond. Yes, we do. That observation, completely anecdotal and not backed up by rigorous scientific testing, as it is, may go some way to explaining exactly how it was that an 83-year-old Texas great-grandmother, Rebecca Taylor, accidentally took her own life after being prescribed new medication by her English doctor. As the story goes, Mrs. Taylor had recently been knocked down by a car, and the accident had resulted in, among other things, her left hip being completely shattered. As is often the case when one ages, she was taking considerably longer than she had hoped to recover from the debilitating injuries. Not only that, she was in a tremendous amount of physical pain. After putting up with this for as long as she could, and probably moaning about it vociferously, as all old people do, she eventually made an appointment with a doctor, one Thomas Davies, to discuss the possibility of obtaining some stronger pain medication. Naturally, the good doctor was extremely sympathetic to her plight and prescribed her Oromorph, basically morphine that you drink instead of inject. Nice. As she was leaving the doctor's, she casually informed Davies that up until now she'd been drinking almost 1 pint of whiskey every day in order to help combat the pain. Would it, she wanted to know, be okay to keep doing this? That is where the sarcasm was misunderstood, and this misunderstanding would ultimately cost Mrs. Taylor her life. According to court reports, Davies responded by saying, "Well, I can't see why that could possibly be a problem. Can you?" Sadly, as some of you might have guessed, it was a problem, and 2 days later, Mrs. Taylor was admitted to the hospital and would die several days after. During the resulting court case, the doctor's defense team would argue that Davies had an extremely difficult year. He was tired, he was stressed, and when Mrs. Taylor asked her question, he was absolutely sure she was joking and responded in kind. The jury, apparently also sarcasm impaired, found the doctor guilty of 1 count of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison while also being banned from practicing medicine for life. I think it's false. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of this part of the script. All that remains is for us to deal with the answers. Are you ready, Simon? Yes, sir. Okay. Did technology legend and epic podcaster Leo Laporte get so drunk at the Consumer Electronics Show that he ended up embarking on a naked mission? The answer is no. Oh no! Dave, this was so good! This was such a good story, goddamn! However, you may be interested to know that a variation of this story has happened to both myself and my stepdad on separate occasions. I simply took elements from both stories and combined them. Did Reese Witherspoon become obnoxious while being arrested for drunk driving? The answer is she did, yes! She even went as far as to shout a variation of the phrase, "Do you know who I am?" As said before, she did appear to be quite sorry about it all afterwards. Nailed it. Now we move on to the epic story of Lucas Fitzroy Pontis, if you remember, attempted to get drunk with a bear. Is it true? Well, no. Boom. I said that one was false and I triple underlined it. I really do hope that Simon thought it was, because I put some serious effort into this one. Firstly, having said that, I gave him an incredibly obvious clue in the title. That's right, if I'd read the title correctly, then he would have been fully aware that this story was utterly fictional. For those of you who are good with anagrams... Yes. Boom. Big brain. Simon, write it down to see if you won't figure out. Lucas Fitzroy Pontis is an anagram of... totally fictitious person. There you go. God damn, Simon, you giant brain. I impress myself sometimes. If you remember, I told the story of a young lad inadvertently engaging in sexual relations with his girlfriend's mother, and you discover it was her the next day. I told you that the lad in question recounted the story in the Lily Allen show. I'm sure there are many of you out there saying it. If you appeared on that sort of trash television, then there's absolutely no way to tell whether it's true or not. Yeah, but we're just talking about whether the story is true, not whether it actually happened. Certainly, I would agree with you, but I have what you might call insider information on this one. On the surface, the story is true. A young lad did go on the show and tell Lily Allen the same story that I told you. However, he was lying. But you might be asking, Dave, how can you possibly know that? And the answer's quite simple. The young lad in question was my big brother. You see, Big Face, as he almost exclusively referred to me by, due to the fact that he got mumps as a young teenager, had somewhat of a crush on the awful singer and even more awful television host. As a result of this crush, he was determined to meet her. What better way to accomplish this than to make up a story, submit it to the show's website, get invited on the story to tell the show, and very briefly meet Lily Allen. Unbelievably, all of these things happened. He watches quite a lot of Brain Blaze episodes, and I just hope he remembers the drunken conversation we had over Christmas about including this story. Boom! I mean, I know it's a false story, but it happens, and I'm counting it. Let's move on to the question of whether or not the former Russian president, what did I say? True. By absolutely hammered and getting pizza, the answer's yes. When I wrote this entry, I thought of an absolute zinger to go along with the answer. Unfortunately, I can no longer locate the untitled document in which I wrote it down. Disappointing, isn't it? Final one. So we've arrived at the final question. Was an old lady, in fact, poisoned due to, I said it was false, due to her inability? No, or at least the version of the story that I told you was a lie. Boom. I'm sure out there somewhere something like this has happened. I stand by my original statement. Americans are sarcasm impaired. So, boom. I got, Dave, 5 out of 6, man. It's a good score. It's a good score. Thanks, Dave. See you next time. Simon's a dick. And I'll be like, oh, yeah, should have seen that one coming. So let's see about that, shall we, Dave?